With the release of James Gunn's DCU Superman in just a little bit, we're going back and reviewing all of the previous Superman films. And this is it. We've landed on the one where Superman goes bad, along with the rest of his franchise. Hi, my name's Zach. We're talking about the infamous Superman 3. And before we get started, like many of you, I started this YouTube channel because I cannot watch a movie without needing to talk about it afterwards. And if that sounds like you, you're in the right place. Consider hitting that subscribe button. Also, I don't want to be the only one just talking here, so comment down below your thoughts on Superman 3. Give me some context in there. Did you watch it in theaters? Did you grow up with it? Did you just watch it for the first time today? Comment all that down below. I'd love to see your story. Now, I had seen all of the previous Superman films, but before going back and rewatching them for this review series, I hadn't seen them in quite some time. And Superman 3, while I was watching it, I had this realization I might not have ever seen this full movie. I had seen the famous scenes of Superman versus Clark Kent where they had the fight in the junkyard. I've seen various bits with Richard Pryor. I saw the big computer battle at the end of the film. But as I was watching this movie, it felt like a first time viewing. So this is me coming pretty much fresh off of Superman 3. I always knew that it was where the franchise went off the rails. But boy, was I not fully prepared for how much. But before we get into all of that, let's start off with what worked about Superman 3. And just kind of jump into the obvious right off the bat with this one. Christopher Reeve, for as much as this movie almost makes all of the wrong decisions, which we'll talk about in the next section here, Christopher Reeve always stays committed. And in this movie in particular, he still gives it his all when it comes to playing both Superman and Clark Kent. And there's the added challenge to Christopher Reeve in this film where he not only has to play Clark Kent and Superman, he's also got to play a third version of when Superman gets the manufactured kryptonite that turns him bad in this film. And the sequences in here where Christopher Reeve has to portray a Superman who's gone bad in this particular tone of a film, he does a really good job. In fact, he does a better job playing evil Superman in this film than the quality of this film deserves to have him playing. He's very convincing. There's some moments where I think Christopher Reeve is legit scary when he's playing bad Superman. And when it comes to the junkyard battle, the fight between the consciousness of Clark Kent and Superman fighting, I guess it's a metaphorical fight. It doesn't quite make a lot of sense if you take it literally. But it's a fun little fight. Putting two Christopher Reeves on the same frame where they're fighting and grabbing at each other, it looks pretty good for 1983. Also, there is an attempt to make the Superman sequences a lot more grounded in this film, where in the first two films, they really did rely a lot on projector screens, blue screen. You could tell there was a lot of times where when Christopher Reeve is physically being lifted up in wires, he's on a soundstage a lot of the time. In Superman 3, they're pretty ambitious with the rigging technology that they're doing here, where they've got Christopher Reeve on real locations, on physical streets. He's flying around, he's taking off. Some of it still looks pretty good, along with the action sequences in here. They're tangible. You can see the physical nature of it all, where early on in this film there's a fight, or not even a fight, but there's a rescue scene at this like power plant that catches on fire. Christopher Reeve is going around, he's saving people, he's using parts of the building to help people escape from the building, and it's on a real location. It's practically in the world, so it looks good. It still looks really good to this day. And yeah, with the advancements of some of the technology coming off of the first two films, I think a lot of it still holds up fairly well. Looks pretty good. So you got Christopher Reeve doing a great job once again here as Superman and Clark Kent. You've got some decent action pieces. So let's move on to what didn't work about Superman 3. And just generally speaking, for this film as a whole, this is one of the most misguided and miscalculated sequels that was ever made in a franchise. Where the Donner films, Richard Lester, who directed this film, filled in the patches of Superman 2 for Richard Donner when he was let go. But primarily, Superman 1 and Superman 2 are from Richard Donner and his vision. And there is campiness, and there is goofiness, and there is silliness, and fun comedic moments in those first two Superman films. But they also have a real earnest and sincerity to the Superman story that they are telling that allows you to kind of buy into the world and buy into those characters and not necessarily take it seriously, but find it believable within the context of the world they're setting up. Superman 3 is solely directed by Richard Lester, and there are little bits of slapsticky comedy that Richard Lester injected into Superman 2 when he was patching it up, primarily during the Zod and Superman fight in Metropolis in the final act of the film. But here it's full Lester, it's full slapstick, it's full comedy, to the point that this film starts with an 8-minute sequence over the opening credits of just farcity slapstick going on, where there's telephone booths falling over like dominoes. Even Clark Kent is walking down the street, and they get him involved in this slapstick routine that goes on for so long. And right away, when this movie starts, you're like, are we even watching a Superman film? Because unfortunately, in this section, I've got to add in Richard Pryor. Now, Richard Pryor in this film is in this film because he was on a late night talk show talking up how excited he was for Superman 2.
Superman 2.
Superman 2?
That's what I'm waiting on to see.
Really?
Yeah. So did you see Superman 1?
Sure.
Well, this one, remember the people was in the glass?
Yeah.
Well, he goes and gets them.
Yeah.
And brings them back to Earth accidentally. And there's 4 Supermans.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and 1 Superwoman. Oh, it's going to be good. The previews are great.
The producers saw that. They hit him up saying, do you want to be in Superman 3? They got him in here, basically co-leading the film with Superman. He's on the poster, for crying out loud. And this film starts with Richard Pryor's character, Gus, in the unemployment line. He's the first frame we see in Superman 3. In the first 2 films, we start off in space. We've got the credits going. It's epic. It's exciting. Right there, it's such a departure from what we're used to seeing from Superman films. And Richard Pryor in this movie really doesn't work. You can feel how forced he is into the narrative. It's clear he's here because the producers liked his stuff and know that he's a big star. They thought he was going to draw in an audience, draw in some dollars, so they put him in this film. But he doesn't work in a Superman movie. And I've not seen Richard Pryor in much else except for Superman 3. In fact, I haven't seen any of his stand-up routines. I don't know anything of him outside of Superman 3, really. So watching this movie with Richard Pryor, I don't want to judge his comedic talents off of this film because he was clearly a very talented comedian. That's why he's in this film to begin with. But none of his shticks work in this film. There are so many moments in this film where we stop and we just watch Richard Pryor do some kind of bit, some kind of routine.
Our President of the United States sitting down to write a peace treaty and have his ballpoint pen bust open and the ink run out all over his nice clean pants in front of the world leaders.
And they don't work. They kill the pace of this film. They're not funny. And I don't want to be so harsh on Richard Pryor, but a lot of this was improvised. A lot of this is what he's bringing to the film. So it's hard not to be super critical on him when his contributions to Superman 3 are what ruins Superman 3.
His cape was flapping in the wind. He was flying. He was great. He was just flying around.
Now, I shouldn't primarily say he ruined Superman 3. There's a lot going on in here that just doesn't work. First of all, Richard Pryor's in here, but a lot of the elements that kind of made up the world of Superman in the first two films, they're gone. Margot Kidder famously talked about how displeasured she was that Richard Donner got fired. So seemingly they wrote her in here for like 5 minutes and then booted her out of the film. She'll tell you it's because she talked up Richard Donner when he got fired.
You're supposed to say that. You're supposed to say we're exploring another character or whatever. They hurt my beloved Donner, and I made no bones about how I felt about it, and the repercussions were followed like the night to day. So I come in at the beginning and I say I'm going on vacation, hi Annette O'Toole, and I go off and I come back at the end, I guess, with a tan.
But you remove Lois Lane from this film. Gene Hackman is not in here as Lex Luthor, so you remove him as well. The Daily Planet plays a very small role in this film. So a lot of the core elements of Superman's world that we've gotten used to and adjusted to over the last two films, they're completely gone. And they're replaced with Clark Kent going back to Smallville and finding a love interest with Lana Lane, who was briefly shown in the high school portion of Superman 1. So in that way, they're trying to tie this back to the first film, with this being Clark's first crush, essentially, that we saw in high school. Now he's starting up a romance with her. She's played by Annette O'Toole at this point. And when you're replacing Lois Lane with this Lana Lane in Superman 3, we invested so much into the romance of Lois Lane and Superman in 1 and 2. And 2 is the film that showed us that they can't be together because Clark can't, or Superman, I should say, can't be with anybody unless he becomes mortal, which we already saw that he tried to do. He can't do it. He's got to be Superman. We already saw that completion of that character journey done in Superman 2. We know that this guy essentially can't have love. So you give him a new love interest in Superman 3, I'm immediately disinterested in their romance. And unfortunately, Annette O'Toole and Christopher Reeve, they're no Margot Kidder and Christopher Reeve. The chemistry in this I find to be extremely weak, and the romance to be extremely forced. I don't feel like it works on any level whatsoever. Even though it's kind of a fun tie back to the first film, it's also very forced. Another thing that's quite forced in this movie is the threat of computers. Now, this is from the 80s. Obviously, I was not alive in the 80s. I was born in 98. So I don't know what the whole world thought of computers at this time. But this movie is nonsensical when it comes to the computer use in this film, because the whole plot of the bad guy, which is basically just like this knockoff Gene Hackman Lex Luthor in this film, is he wants to control all of the coffee in the world and all of the oil supply in the world. The oil supply makes a little bit more sense than the coffee. But his whole plan is to get Gus, Richard Pryor's character, because Richard Pryor, even though he can't hold a job, he ends up being a computer genius. He's hacking like satellites in space that can control the weather to cause a hurricane in Colombia so that their coffee supply goes out. He's using hacking skills to get all of the oil tankers to go into one spot in the sea so that they have full control over the oil. He even uses a satellite in space to analyze what kryptonite would be made of so he could manufacturally make kryptonite and give it to Superman. It is absurd, and it is so stupid. It makes no sense. And despite how people might have thought of it in the 80s, like I said, I don't really know what the computer scene was like back then. Especially today, it has aged horribly. It has aged terribly. And another thing that has aged so badly about this movie is the fact that it is this farce slapstick comedy for a full 2 hours where none of it is funny. None of it lands with me. And even the Superman Gone Bad moments, they use them for jokes. He goes around, he straightens out the Leaning Tower of Pisa. He blows out the Olympic torch before it's about to be lit. He's throwing peanuts around in a bar, smashing up bottles. Like, this is evil Superman. This is what he's doing. He's doing these like elaborate Superman pranks essentially to people. And I get it. It's you can't go overly dark with a Superman film. Even as dark as Donner got in Superman 1 and 2, having Superman go full evil and doing terrible, terrible things would be a little bit too dark. But you can do a little bit more than what they do in this film. And it's really just a shame to see where this franchise went and where it would continue to go. We'll talk about that in very, very soon. But in terms of this film, you can see where they just went off track. Richard Lester was not the person to bring in for this franchise. He shouldn't have continued. The people behind this film making it shouldn't have let him continue. Superman 3 is one of the biggest miscalculated films in superhero movies, in a franchise in general. So when it comes to Superman 3 for me, like I said, I either didn't remember watching this because it was so long ago, or I've only seen bits and pieces of it. Now that I've seen the whole thing, I've seen the whole package, I don't think it works at all. I found it to be a dreadful experience. It was quite boring. It was quite long. And something about me is there's nothing worse in the world for me than watching a stand-up comedian get on stage and just bomb. Everything he tries to do, every funny gag, every funny joke he tries to do, no one laughs. And eventually the laughs turn to boos. That's the worst thing for me. I get such bad secondhand embarrassment from that. And Superman 3 gave me that feeling. This felt like watching a stand-up comedian. And honestly, in some ways, it was watching a stand-up comedian bomb on stage. I can't really think of much that redeems this film, even in the what worked categories. Very minute things to me. So for that reason, Superman 3 is a strong not recommend from me. I don't think there's any reason to watch this unless you just want to be a completionist and see all of the Superman films. If you like this, don't forget to check out the other Superman reviews we're doing in this series. You can check out that playlist right up there. Right down there is more content, and down there is the most recently uploaded video to the channel. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. We'll be back very soon to continue with Superman 4: The Quest for Peace. God help us all. Don't just watch movies, talk movies. I'll see you guys next time. Take care.